How's it going, everybody? I'm Josh from Elder Drunken Highlander, and I'm coming to you with a tournament report video, a cEDH vlog of sorts for an online event, which is something we haven't done in a bit. It's been like a year almost since I've done an online event vlog. I'm gonna be going through my performance at the Path to the Peak tournament, where I top 4 with River Song, which is super hype. It's a brand new deck that I built like less than a week before the tournament. I went 0-8 in practice games, was not super confident going into the tournament, went in there and somehow made it to top seed in the top 4. So we're going to go over exactly how I did all of that, each of my games, all the interesting stuff that happened in them, how I ended up winning each of them. I won each one in a different way. I didn't use the same win con twice in this tournament, which was super interesting too. So we're going to go through all of that as well. And we're going to go over just the deck, do a little deck check on the deck itself. So before we get into the games, let's just take a look at the deck really quick. So this is Frozen River, part of the Control Winter movement that I guess I'm a part of now. The impetus behind this deck actually is I was playing some cEDH in my apartment with some friends, and my friend Data, who has a Gearson Sarn deck, it makes anything that deals 1 damage and deals 3, played River Song, and I took like 7 damage off of a fetch land and was like, wait a minute, hold on a second. So I built this entire deck based around prolonging the game with River Song on the battlefield, just because I figured cEDH players are greedy and they they build their decks around tutoring 8 million times in a game. When an opposition agent or a mind sensor comes down, the game revolves around removing that creature. A good strategy is to punish that kind of stuff in a way that encourages people still to do it, when the point where they lower their life total to a point where it becomes too late. And that's more or less what the deck tries to do for the most part. Then once people's life totals are really pressured, there's not a lot they can do, and they don't necessarily die to the River Song, although I did kill quite a lot of people in the tournament with the triggers. They'll just die to the fact that they can't do a lot of things, and you can just kind of get free reign of the game and do whatever you want. So we have a lot of control pieces in the deck to kind of stall stuff out, but we also have a lot of aggressive and explosive win cons. So when we do get to our window, because those windows won't last forever, people will draw into answers eventually. When we do get to the window that we want to create using River Song, we can go off. And that's the entire point of the deck. So we have pieces like Narset, we have pieces like Dak Faden. Dak Faden's nice because these guys are actually both are nice because they shut down people from doing things, they prevent people from drawing cards, they steal important artifacts, but they also get us to our win cons by drawing us cards as well. Our creature suite, we actually have a decent amount of creatures for a control deck. We're playing Ragavan because, mana dorks. We have Dockside. We have a lot of Dockside combos, which I'll get into in a little bit. And then we have just a bunch of card advantage and kind of sneaky creatures, ways to find our win cons, and just typical stuff that you'd find. A ton of clones. Clones are really good. You can clone Kroms, you can clone Timnas, you can clone Dockside Extortionists, which is really sweet. We're on Subtlety as well because we're on just basically all the free interaction. More or less all of it. This guy is really sweet in the deck. We don't have a lot of bottom of the deck synergies. I didn't even mention drawing from the bottom of the deck when I was talking about the advantages of playing River Song, and that's because there aren't really a ton of ways to abuse that in the deck. People have suggested Time Stream Navigator just because it gets itself to the bottom of the deck after giving you an extra turn, but you need something else. You need to either wait a turn cycle with it on the board and then do it in response to your draw, or a haste piece, or another way to draw every single turn. And I don't think it's worth it to do that kind of combo. It seems kind of slow. It just seems like it's not going to be something that I'll be able to protect in my window. My window is probably just going to be 1 turn, my turn. I don't think I'll be able to protect a piece that doesn't have some kind of built-in protection to itself on the battlefield for an entire turn cycle, even if I'm playing control. Speaking of which, I have Wandering Archaic and Niv Mizzet as 2 big pieces that protect themselves somewhat that I can stick to the battlefield. Niv Mizzet draws me cards when people try to kill it. I have a lot of ways to protect it that I can draw into, and Wandering Archaic makes it very difficult for other people besides me to interact unless they pay mana or I give them permission. So I really like both of these cards, just big giant threats to stick to prolong the game, and once again help River Song get you to that window with the damage that she's dealing. For our sorcery suite, we have just standard stuff that you'd expect in an Izzet deck, a bunch of clones, Seagate Restoration, because sometimes we can cast it. I did try to cast it a few times in the tournament, it just gets counterspelled, which is totally fine. Use your counterspells. I can wait. We don't have a lot of wheels. I didn't want to feed opposing breach decks. Even though we are a breach deck, we don't need a ton of stuff in our graveyard because we prolong the game, so we don't need to use a wheel to accelerate that. We don't need to give people any extra mana, but we do have Time Twister because Time Twister shuffles something, shuffles the graveyard back in so it can grief opponents, and I do like that. And we do want 1 wheel to tutor up with the Narset in case we want to go for that as a game plan. That's not the worst thing we can do. I say tutor up, but I don't even know if we have any ways to tutor Time Twister in the deck. We don't have Mystical Tutor because Mystical Tutor doesn't work with River Song on the battlefield. I'll put it on top. All right, great. I'll never draw it ever again. That's actually something interesting with Narset. Narset puts the card in the bottom in a random order, so I had to have my opponent's pile cut my Narset bottoms. It was very interesting knowing my next few draws was Narset too. Sometimes she'd brick me, and sometimes she'd give me a bunch of gas that I knew was coming up. There's just a lot of cool interactions with the bottom draws. It just doesn't really do much to help win the game. Here's the thing you all wanted to see, the interaction suite. If you're looking at it, you might say like, wow, there's no interesting or spicy counterspells in there. It actually is kind of light on the interaction compared to other decks, and that's because a lot of our interaction just comes from our commander taxi people. We are a misdirection though. I really like having free spells. I think free spells are really, really important in this kind of deck, just especially because the early game, you do want to have a turn where you tap out for your commander. You need to get her down early and you need to protect her. And so having some free spells makes sure you don't lose in that window there to a deck like Rogsai or Vile Smash or Thrasios, or any of the other fast decks out there that can just go on a push of a button. You don't want to lose on turn 2 to those decks when you're casting your River Song. So you need to have free magic so that you can be able to function. So we're on like everything. We're on everything. I don't think we're actually on days. Just because we're trying to make the game go long, so days they'll be able to pay the 1. So even though it's good early, it does set us back by drawing us a land or putting a land back, which is not good. We're not on Mystic Sanctuary, so that doesn't do anything with River. So there's not even that synergy there to abuse. So I decided to eschew days, Spell Pierce as well, and Conserved Defense, that's the other one, because River is a rogue, Conserved Defense is another Spell Pierce. I just felt like with the game going long, people having mana because they're not doing anything because River Song will stop them if they search, I figured they just pay for it, so I didn't put those things in. Speaking of River Song, we want to be casting her as early as we can, turn 1, turn 2, as often as we can every single game, unless we have something better to be doing. So we're even on Jeweled Amulet, which basically is a card that says play me turn 1, get your commander turn 2. That's really all it does. It's there. It's a card that's in the deck. I don't know, it just gets River Song out on turn 2. That's I used it in the tournament. That's what it does. So that's just super important. We are on Mox Opal. I felt like we had a high enough artifact count for Mox Opal, and we do want to be explosive. There are turns we can turn 1 River Song with the Mox Opal, so that's super important. Conjurer's Bauble, one of the other spicy cards in the deck. It puts a card from our graveyard on the bottom and then immediately puts it into our hand with River Song, so that's kind of sweet. Noxious Survival, eat your heart out, is what that says. Pretty cool. And then just a bunch of standard stuff. This is a control piece, and since River gets counters, it can give her like a Deathrite Shaman or some other activated abilities, which could be useful. I haven't actually seen this card in any of my tournament games. I didn't draw it at all, but there was another player, a Sisay player, using an Agatha's Soul Cauldron in a very clever way to like put a Deathrite Shaman activated ability on one of his creatures and then like brick someone else's Deathrite Shaman. And I thought that was sweet. So I think it is a useful card as like a Grave Hate piece. And then Grinding Station, because that's one of the ways we win. When you have a lot of these 0 mana artifacts, we can grind them away with a Breach. It's just, you gotta win any way you can. So now we're on to enchantments. It's just standard stuff, Dress Down, Breach, Rhystic Study, but you'll see the Curiosity effects. Those are both to win with Niv Mizzet and also to slap onto River Song. River Song deals damage every time someone searches, which means with these on her, you'll also draw every time someone searches, which is a cool little built-in card advantage engine you can do with her. Vile Smasher, eat your heart out. Ironically, this deck is such a good matchup on Curious Control because Thrasios has to scry too. It's just so funny. Seal of Fire is a card that I'm really, really high on. I killed a player with Seal of Fire this tournament, which I'm hype about. It just basically kills every single flash hate bear. We hate Opposition Agent. We hate Aven Mind Sensor because they stop people from pressuring themselves out with River Song, which is our game plan. We kind of want those gone, so we want to kill those. And also the ones that stop drawing, even like Fairy Masterminds on the opponent's side of the field, I just don't want to deal with those. So Seal of Fire comes down, and it basically discourages people from playing any of that stuff. And it's just cool because if someone blocks, I can pop it and kill a blocker if they forget it's there. It's just a really, really fun gotcha card, and I really enjoy it. And I think it's also just super powerful right now in the Orcish Bowmaster meta. This just says, fuck your Bowmasters, get out of here. So I really, really enjoy it. And then we're on 28 lands, which is a lot for me. It was 29, but I cut one. But there's a lot of lands. There's nothing really special going on except for this baby, Field of Ruin, one of the only cards in the game that forces your opponents to search. You destroy a non-basic land, and then all 3 players every single player in the game, actually, yourself included, goes and searches for a basic. We're on 4 basics, the snow-covered lands, and then 2 non-snow-covered lands, just for this card and also for our fetches. We did used to be on, if we look in considering, Knowledge Exploitation, because our commander is a rogue, but I just found I wasn't stealing anything powerful enough. Like, if we look at the mana cost of this deck, a Naws is not a good idea. So there's not a lot of things that are good to steal. No one's on Peer into the Abyss anymore, sadly. So I ended up cutting that one. But that might be one to try out if people are still on big instants and sorceries, turn spells, stuff like that in your meta. That's definitely a meta call card. Other than that, though, nothing special about the lands. We are on Bonder's Enclave and War Room, just as extra ways to draw cards. The War Room ended up killing me in the finals pod. I used it to kill myself so that I didn't die on Ashani's terms. And the Bonder's Enclave was really useful in another game. I think it drew me like 3 cards, which is sick. I was just stalling the game, drawing with the Enclave, and chilling. For win cons, the deck has Underworld Breach, Brain Freeze, Lion's Eye Diamond, or Lotus Petal, so we can mill everybody out, or just find a different win con from our own deck and go off that way. We have Dualcaster Mage and Twin Flame or Heat Shimmer, so that Dualcaster Mage enters, makes a copy of the Twin Flame or Heat Shimmer on the stack, makes infinite hasty copies of itself. We also have Niv Mizzet Perun and Curiosity effects. That is another really, really easy way to win, especially because we have so many Curiosity effects in the deck. And then lastly, we have Transplant Theorist. This card's really, really cool because it lets us loop nearly any spell we want, which is sweet. If we have, and because it has a draw engine built into it, if we can generate artifacts when we cast those spells, we can keep looping that spell forever, more or less, or equal to the number of cards in our hand because we have to discard a card to draw a card. So what we can do with this card is if there's a Dockside Extortionist on the battlefield, we can use a Twin Flame or a Heat Shimmer to clone it, which will create a bunch of artifacts, and then in response to those artifacts entering the battlefield, we can use the mana from them to put the Twin Flame or the Heat Shimmer on the bottom of our library, and then draw it with Transplant Theorist when the Transplant Theorist sees the artifacts enter the battlefield. Then we can recast it and continue our loop again and again. So that means that every single time we'll draw equal to the number of artifacts, we'll get to see a ton of cards. We'll hopefully find Underworld Breach or a way to tutor for Underworld Breach or a way to tutor for Muddle the Mixture or tutor for Underworld Breach because we will have the mana. We're going to be making lots of Dockside copies. And if that fails, we have a ton of hasty Docksides to pressure life totals, a ton of mana, and a sculpted hand. So, and then also we can use our ton of mana with the Transplant Theorist to put stuff back on the bottom of our library and draw with our draw engines, which we probably have found at that point with our sculpted hand. So even though we're going down in cards, like we could find Time Twister, which means we can just keep going. We could find a ton of different ways to pop off. Like if we find Spellseeker, we can tutor for Muddle Mixture, we can tutor for Breach. Imperial Recruiter finds Spellseeker, which finds Muddle Mixture, which finds Breach. It's just a sweet combo. And the other cool thing about the combo is Imperial Recruiter just assembles the entire thing. You can go Imperial Recruiter, find Spellseeker, Spellseeker, find yourself a Twin Flame. Then you Twin Flame the Spellseeker and the Imperial Recruiter. Imperial Recruiter gets the Transplant Theorist, and then Spellseeker gets yourself a bounce spell. And then the Transplant Theorist, in response to its own Enter the Battlefield trigger, will put the Twin Flame at the bottom of your deck. You draw the Twin Flame, and then you can use the bounce spell to bounce the Imperial Recruiter, replay it, get a Dockside Extortionist, cast Dockside Extortionist, make a ton of mana, which you get back all the mana that you've used during this entire thing. Usually you start this combo with a Dockside Extortionist or a clone of a Dockside Extortionist, and from there you Twin Flame Strive in your Dockside Extortionist and your Imperial Recruiter. You can get Dualcaster Mage off the copied Imperial Recruiter. Then from there you can Twin Flame Dualcaster Mage for the win, or if you don't have a combat step that you can use for that one, you can continue going until you filtered your entire deck until you found Niv Mizzet, in which case you can Twin Flame the Dualcaster Mage for Tandem Lookout. There's like a myriad ways to win with this combo. The other really cool thing is every time you strive Twin Flame, you can target the copied Dockside Extortionists and make just exponential amount of copies and mana every time. So once you get going with this, it's very likely you'll see the majority of your library. Like you will find that Underworld Breach. You will find that Curiosity effect or whatever it is you need. So it's really cool. It's like Is It Ad Nauseum, except it's like a 4-card combo. And just for the record, I did not use this at all in the tournament, this combo. Not even once did I use it, unfortunately. I didn't even see the Transplant Theorist, and whenever I saw the Imperial Recruiter, I was like, oh great, get WinCon, win. So it just never came up. But I really just want to see the Transplant Theorist. I haven't seen it in any of my practice games either. Kind of stinks. I just want to see what it does. Conjurer's Bauble I've gotten a few times, and it's been super hot, but I just haven't seen the Transplant Theorist. Anyway, let's go over the games. So round 1, I was going 3rd against Kinnan, Malcolm Vile, which I was excited to see because that's the other deck I was thinking about bringing to this tournament, and Thada Adele, which is a deck that, not gonna lie, I have talked smack about in the past, and I have kind of changed my opinion on after seeing this game because it was kind of sweet with the things I saw this deck do. Kinnan had a ridiculously strong start and ended up getting its Basalt Monolith combo out turn 2 before any of us could do anything. Even though I got a turn 1 River Song with a Jewel Lotus, it wasn't enough to slow down Kinnan, who just tutored with Tezzeret anyway, ate his damage, and got the Basalt Monolith out. So we knew that death was imminent for us on that next Tezzeret activation, and we were a little scared. So none of us really did anything about Smurfs going off early. He ended up being able to equip a Conqueror's Flail to his Malcolm, which was an issue for sure, but honestly it wasn't as scary as the Kinnan. And then it became more of an issue when Bedelaine here and Thada Adele untapped and played a Grafdigger's Cage immediately to save us from the Kinnan. Later in the game, I was able to find a Niv Mizzet and cast it with the Dockside Extortionist. Smurs ended up getting a Harnfell, which was his outlet, which is one of the less scary outlets in the deck, so thank God for that. And then ended up getting really unlucky and gassing out with it, which stinks because from what I can see, their deck list is more or less the same as mine. I'm not on Conqueror's Flail. Maybe I should be after seeing it in this game. It's kind of tight. They weren't able to really do much with the cards from Hornus. Just super bad luck from them. I think they could have had it there. I get to my turn. I play a Niv Mizzet. There's a One Ring from Bedelaine, which is not cast. It's just put into play, so he's no protection. And this is where Wugpug gets infinite treasures, basically, and just kind of starts to try and stack his deck with Kinnan. So this is really interesting. We had a really cool judge call here. This is one of the reasons that you just call a judge whenever you're confused, because we had to get a judge to help us to do. What Wugpug is doing on the screen here is he is manually ordering his library with the Kinnan. So he's looking at the top 5 cards, checking to see if the card he needs is in there, and then, which is a Boseiju to break the Grafdigger's Cage, and then continuing to go and put through the bottom of his library. So once he finds the Boseiju, which at this point in the video he's already done, he then counts the cards in his deck until he gets to the bottom of his deck where he knows Boseiju is in that last Kinnan pile, and then hopes to draw the Boseiju, and that's his out. You can see right there, those are the last 3 cards. The Boseiju is in there somewhere, and he's not drawing them, so they're on top of his, he's not looking at Kinnan, so they go on top of his library, and then he untaps, and he goes to see if he can draw the Boseiju. Unfortunately for him, he did not get it for another 2 turns. So then at this point, I'm bounced my Dockside Extortionist with a Chain of Vapor. After Smurs goes for a couple searches and is unable to get anything, brings themselves down to 2, I'm able to go bounce my Dockside back to my hand and recast it with the Chain of Vapor, which means that I then get infinite treasure tokens as well, because obviously Wugpug's not going to crack, because Wugpug's going to try and draw this Boseiju and win, or they're going to lose. So it's also good for them just to leave the treasures around and hope I don't have it. So that was the key for me, is getting infinite treasures was the first really, really good thing. But it also, not cracking them ended up being the key for Wugpug. I cast a Time Twister, and I dual caster mage the Time Twister, which then puts 7 more Niv Mizzet triggers in the stack. At this point, I've played a Seal of Fire, which is my pet card in cEDH, and popped it to kill Smurs, which is super, super hype before they could see 7 new cards. Love that card. And I'm pointing 7 damage at Wugpug. My goal here is to just kill Wugpug with draw triggers, and then attack at Bedelaine to kill him with Niv Mizzet and a big River Song, and try to get him with the rest of burn damage. But look at this. He draws the Boseiju in the 7. This is some bull crap. So he's able to pop the Grafdigger's Cage and go off with Kinnan. And this is when things get weird. So he puts all of his creatures into play until he finds a Thrasios. And at which point, you can see my Time Twister and the Niv Mizzet trigger for me casting the Time Twister that I responded to with my Dual Caster Mage are all still in the stack. He gets his Thrasios, and he asks the judge if he can shortcut putting 80 Thrasios draws on the stack, bottoming an Emergent Zone and a Cephalid Coliseum, explaining that this line is to crop rotation for the Emergent Zone and play it. We all allow the shortcut, and it goes through, and 80 River Song triggers get put on the stack. So now he's got to respond. That Phantasmal image, by the way, is a clone of my Niv Mizzet. So he goes for the crop rotation to cast it to get the Emergent Zone of his deck, but he has to draw a card. So like the 80 River Song triggers aren't going to kill him, but what's going to kill him is he needs to draw a card when this crop rotation gets cast. So that means he needs to draw the Emergent Zone. So he's looking at his deck right now because there's known information to everyone. There's a judge in the Discord call watching the game in the spectator link at this point. So there's no hullabaloo going on here. There's no sus activity, you know. He's just putting stuff. Also, Bedelaine did indeed search for an island and took 9 from the River Song, which was super important for me. That's really progressed my game plan of attacking him for lethal. So the 80 damage on the check, he draws the out he needs to react in instant speed, and he just dies to River Song triggers. You can see me, I'm like in the bottom there, absolutely chilling in my tournament robe, just hanging out, super comfy, knowing that like I don't think he has it, and I just have to wait for the triggers to resolve. Wugpug ends up dying to River Song, who at this point we're just like has basically infinite power because it doesn't matter. And he plays a Force of Negation to try and counter my second Time Twister because that'll put 7 more Niv Mizzet triggers on the stack targeting him, and he'll go to basically no damage. I'm able to counter it with a Red Elemental Blast, which basically puts in lethal Niv Mizzet triggers for him on the stack. I still have River Song and Niv Mizzet that he can attack. So at this point, I ask him to concede. Drawing from the bottom of my library was a pain. You see the little TARDIS on the top of my deck there? My boyfriend made that for me, so I would stop GRVing myself and drawing from the top of my library by accident. So shout outs there. That saved me. And then from there, I just... Wow, that's a face that I'm making. And then from there, I just Red Elemental Blast the Force of Negation so that he can't do anything, and ask him if he wants to concede, or if we want to keep playing it out and spending the time. He says he'll just concede, and we move on. So round 1, honestly, the best round that I played all day. Really tight play from everybody. Really sad for Smurs. They didn't get there with what looked like a super clean, super tight line. Just that sometimes Harnfell don't get you the things. And really well played for Betalane on a slower deck going last. Kind of stinks, but they did a lot. They did quite a lot considering that they were kind of out of it for most of the game just due to turn order, really. And Wugpug just played some super cool Kinnan stuff. I've never seen the instant speed Kinnan line. I've only heard of it in myths and legends, and I didn't even know that you could reorder your library. Like, that makes perfect sense. It's kind of obvious when you think about it, but just never occurred to me to do something like that. So seeing him execute that was sick. So super tight play to everyone. Great job to everyone who was in that pod. That was just a real fun one, and that was my first ever win with River Song. I was 0-8 in practice games, so I was feeling really confident after this one. So round 2, I was up against Takato on Timnacrom. I was up against Narset Enlightened Exile, which I've seen Kai play this deck before, so I was a little scared because Kai's a menace on this deck. And I was up against Zadahedron Grinder, which actually terrified me because all those creatures in my trying to pressure everyone's life total deck, if he just turned his creatures on me and then killed everyone that I got down low, could totally steal a win from me. So I was actually very wary of the Zada deck. I don't have a lot of creature board control in here because I was expecting basically what we saw, which is a bunch of like instant and sorcery based mid-range decks. So I bad matchup with Zada. I was a little scared, so I'm glad that they kind of bricked out, which they ended up doing. I had a really strong opener. I ended up getting a turn 2 River Song off of a Jewel Amulet and a Mox Diamond, and then was able to stick a Curiosity on her, which meant that I had the draw engine and the stacks piece out early. Takato was able to get some cards from Mystic Study for that, but I wasn't too worried about that. I figured if I could stick my draw engine, then it wouldn't matter as much that he also had his, even if his is a little bit better than mine and came out a little bit sooner than mine. The turn 1 Ristic was really strong off the Lotus Petal. I still think that, you know, the damage would add up, and in the late game, his card advantage wouldn't matter as much as the fact that his life total is very low and he couldn't search. So I was just banking on protecting River Song, basically. I ended up gassing out all my cards to play a Dockside and get myself a Niv Mizzet, which I thought, you know, very worth it. If you're going to get all your cards out of the way, do it for a Niv Mizzet. And I was able to stick that. Ironically, Niv Mizzet was the first card I drew off of Curiosity, so that was kind of funny. It's just how it goes sometimes. But Niv by himself is just a potent draw engine and control piece, and it ended up being super useful. I bopped the Esper Sentinel. I was able to keep the Goblin Recruiter down. Takato has an Orcish Bowmasters, I think. Did he have an Orcish Bowmasters? No, I'm sorry. A Ragavan. That's a Ragavan. Takato had a Ragavan that I was able to kill. Niv was just super useful, and ended up becoming even more in handy later. So then Takato tries to put a Phantasmal Image on the stack, which means he's going to copy one of the 2 Docksides. In response, I Brainstorm, which means with Niv I'll draw a total of 4 cards and kill both Docksides. He does a Pact of Negation against the Brainstorm, which signifies he's going to try to win that turn, basically. So I try to get the Narset player to remove my Dockside, basically, because there's already 1 damage on his Dockside, and I wasn't putting any other damage from Niv on his Dockside or my Dockside on purpose, because I wanted to create this scenario. So he actually snapped my Dockside for me, which is hype as fuck. And that actually ended up winning me the game, is that play there. So he snaps my Dockside for me, puts it back in my hand. My Niv deals 1 damage to his Dockside, killing it. Phantasmal Image has no more targets, and Takato has a pact that resolves. So that works out great for me, right? I don't even do anything. My Brainstorm gets countered by a Pact, which honestly is a win for me. Brainstorm would be able to get rid of some of the bad cards in my hand, put them on top where I don't draw them with River, but like, big win getting Takado's Pact to resolve because he pay 5 mana on his turn. So if it does get to his turn, he's fucked. And the snap putting my dockside back means I have access to a ton of mana, and it means that he can't snap his own dockside. It also means that he doesn't have his dockside for his turn, so he's already choked on mana. It was just, honestly, it was a great play. And in all the fiasco and casting and hullabaloo and other adverbs, adjectives, and nouns, the Goblin Recruiter combo that the Zada deck had set up also got totally bricked out. So it was just great. So then I get to my turn and I play a Field of Ruin. And in between this, the dockside has come down from the top of the Snoop pile, which he can't do anymore because the Recruiter's gone, and he makes 7 treasures. That's notable for later. I get the Field of Ruin and I crack it basically immediately. Earlier in the tournament, I punted by targeting a Crystal Vein with this Field of Ruin, but I wasn't going to do that again. I targeted a real land. We popped the land, and everybody is forced to search their deck, which triggers River Song 3 times, deals a bunch of damage, which doesn't matter as much here because everyone's life totals are kind of high. Matters a little bit for Takado, but he's packed it anyway. And I do draw 3 cards, which is important because in one of those 3 cards, I draw an Imperial Recruiter. And you'll notice that I have a bunch of treasures from my dockside being recast because the Zada player was like, heck it, if you don't win this turn, I need to win on my next turn. And I think that other players are also going to win on their turns, so I'm not going to crack my treasures. The Narset player also in their turn decided not to go for it with a Frantic Search and a Breach because they didn't want to draw me a bazillion cards, which I think is the correct play because I super would have won if they did that. I would have drawn some interaction and countered their stuff at a moment when it would have mattered when I had backup, and they would have been hecked. So, good on them for not going for it. Sad they didn't get another turn. Sometimes that's just how it goes. So, I went and was able to cast the dockside, was able to Field of Ruin everyone and draw 3 cards. There's an Imperial Recruiter in that draw. Then from there, I was able to use the Recruiter to get a Tandem Lookout. I also got a Fimage in those draws, so I had more dockside mana. Then the Tandem Lookout paired with Niv Mizzet. But in response, the Narset player exiled my Niv Mizzet with a Soul Partition. I had the ability to counter it, but I figured I would just let it go through and recast the Niv Mizzet because I had a lot of mana anyway, and he's not able to be countered, and my counterspell is able to be countered, so I didn't want to waste the mana. So I just let him go, paid 8 mana for Niv Mizzet, put him back into play, Soulbond re-triggered, and then I started the loop by attacking Takado with River Song, which triggered Curiosity to draw a card, and then I asked everyone if they wanted to concede. They said yes, so I didn't have to demonstrate annoying Time Twister loops, and we called it. That was it. Round 3, I was going second. I got a turn 2 River Song, which was super sweet, but it didn't matter because Kenrith got a turn 2 Dockside combo for the win, and he got there. He took us out. That was the end for us super fast. I was actually really glad to die early. Here I am looking at the text in a meal, just making sure there's absolutely no way that this deflecting SWAT can save us here. Spoiler alert, it can't. And there's just, sometimes you just die turn 2, but I was glad that happened because I had been playing to time every other round and I was tired and I wanted to break. I wanted to eat some food, so I was able to get that. And so thank you very much, Brick Squad, for doing it quickly and painlessly. That's how I want to die. If I'm going to lose at a tournament, it better be in the first 20 minutes of the round, so help me God. Round 4, I kind of wanted to draw just so I can keep resting, but 2 other players needed winning in for top 16, so we didn't do that. Me and Zippy, the other player who could have drawn to get in, agreed to play because, you know, you kind of have to do that. I got a killer opener, and I got a turn 1 River Song, so that was super exciting. We loved that. From there, I was just chilling. There's another player was on Sisay. We had a Traxa, which I know uses a bunch of tutor combos, and Kinnan, who Thrasios is part of their deck. We already know how that matchup goes, so I was very, very excited on the turn 1 River Song, especially because Kinnan has no lands. If you noticed that opening hand, when I saw that, I was like, oh yes, baby. They're already starting behind. So we're very excited to see it. The game ended up getting a little mired when the Atraxa player was going for their win, though, because they were trying to play around River Song, who at this point is at 9. They're at 11 life, so a tutor brings them to 1. I was telling Zippy, who also wanted to draw, that the play would be to crack the fetch that he had on board there in response to a tutor, so River do 11 to Sam, and Sam would die. So Sam was trying to play around that, and me and Zippy, who both wanted the draw, being like, no, we're going to kill you. There's 7 minutes left in the round, and we're going to draw. So he was trying to play around that. He ended up going for a Brood Lord line with a Yogg Will. And you see that Archivist of Ogma there. That actually gained him a life to try and save him, but then he ended up trying to saw in half it in response to some removal killing it, and that just, like, also killed it. So he wasn't able to do that. This game is weird. There's a lot of weird interactions. The Agatha the Soul Cauldron that Zippy had, he used that to give Skrelv a +1/+1 counter, and then yoinked a mana from Sam using Deathrite Shaman by activating in response, which was kind of nutty. Just like weird plays like that. Poor Kinnan player is just doing nothing all game. That's why you got to be careful what you keep. He got a Consecrated Sphinx down, and then I Gilded Draked it, so he killed his own Consecrated Sphinx, so I couldn't have it, which is a choice for sure. It was just a game full of very, very slow decisions, and I'm not gonna lie, I kind of just sat back and let them do their thing while I was just chilling, because I knew I was set. I wasn't gonna die. The game wasn't gonna end. I had Deflecting Swat. I had other counter magic in my hand, so I was just like, yeah, when I see the wind spell, I'll stop it. In the meantime, I'm happy with getting my draw. So I chilled back and let them do their thing, and then when I saw my opportunity to get the draw, we got there. So in top 16, the game ended up being really, really slow. I was super happy to see a Thrasios deck against me, especially to see their Ad Nauseam get counterspelled so early. That was hype, not even by me. I love it when I don't have to do the control thing. And I got River Song out on turn 2, so I was in a really good position. There's a Sisay player again against an early River Song, so that felt good. I was like, okay, I don't have to worry about Zippy. I like playing with them, but man, I hate playing against Sisay, so having River Song against Sisay was just feelings of power for me. So that was cool. And then Takato deciding to go for Spellseeker lines there is also just like, yes, do it, go for the search lines. So we had like a Thrasios deck scrying, a Takato trying to Spellseeker, and a Sisay deck built around tutoring. I felt real good about the early River Song. I ended up stealing Chrom with the Gilded Drake as my draw engine, because that was my plan to get a draw. It's like, I'll steal Chrom or Tymna, whichever one I feel like will draw me more. I'm not stealing Thrasios, even though I have all this mana, because, you know, I don't need to steal Thrasios. Max can hurt himself with Thrasios. I locked him under a Narset later so that he could basically not draw any cards. There's also a Dranith, so like, just a bunch of... Takato helped me out by playing his own stacks pieces, playing this Lothode attacks his own life total. We love to see it. We really do. I actually had a build your own Thrasios. You see that Bonder's Enclave there? That drew me like 3 cards. I did miss a draw with it because I misunderstood how the end step worked, which I can't believe that happened to me. I've been playing Magic for so long, but yeah, that's how it goes. The Bonder's Enclave, I think, drew me like 3 extra cards that game, which is kind of hype for land. It's basically free. The game ends up being a long one, and a lot of people keep going for wins, and I just end up sticking. I have Breach Freeze in my hand, like Breach and Brain Freeze and a way to tutor for the Lion's Eye Diamond in my hand, and I'm like, no, I think people have interaction, and I was right, Sisay had a silence, so I'm real glad I didn't go for that. So instead, I just played a Mystic Remora, and it's like, I'll chill for another turn cycle. If everyone else has interaction, and I have interaction, then we can totally chill for another turn cycle. Takato's gonna have to go for it, or he's dead. Max is gonna have to go for it, or he's dead. Someone's gonna burn that interaction before me. Sisay is 2 tutors away from Teferi, and if they go for that, I can tax them, so they have to use all their interaction, or not die, and then also not be able to get their Teferi. So I had a bunch of I had a Lightning Bolt in my hand and a bunch of other life total interaction stuff going on. So the Chrom with 4/4 flying, I think I had a lot of life total pressure, and I was very confident about not losing to these 3 decks. So I was like, I just need to let them exhaust themselves just a little more, play into my fish a little more, and then I'll have the perfect window to get that safe breach. We don't have a time limit in top 16. We don't need to just go for it. We can just win when it's best to win. So that's what I ended up going for. And Takato went for the win. It worked. He went for this big, complicated win, and I just sat there and did nothing because I was right after him prior. I was so glad it was Takato and not Max who went for the win, because I would be priority bully with Max. But with Takato, I can just be like pass priority. That misstep there, Max offered me to misstep something, and I back him up with I misstep something, he backs me up with his misstep, and I was like, no, you're after me priority, you could do it. And then Takato played a 1-mana spell that needed to be countered or he would win, and Max is like, Josh, do you have a known misstep? Because I got it off a Narset earlier, and I was like, yeah, I do have a known misstep. So do you. Pass priority. And that felt great. That felt so good. Max usually gets me when we play. I did end up having to use the misstep, though, to continue countering things, as you can see. So he countered Chain of Vapor, I countered Swan Song. So I didn't sandbag for that long, but it was still pretty fun to do that to Max, because normally he's the one who outplays me. But from there, Takato just gave me a bunch of free cards that it was a super, super safe breach, and I was just able to go for it on my turn. And then Dockside into a breach with a Lotus Petal in the graveyard and a Brain Freeze, secured the win in top 16, putting me in top seed for top 4. This is my first ever top 4, which is super exciting. I was very into it. I was also not feeling super great. I'd been playing Magic for a long time, and I ate some stuff that wasn't reacting super well with my tummy, and I kind of wanted to to stop playing. So when we got into the top pod and we ended up deciding to split prizing, I was very, very excited. And then when Ashani was like, I don't really want to play. Do we really have to play? I was like, yes, Ashani, let's not play. Let's just go to bed. Martium, Vincent, it was 2 a.m. for him. He also was not super, super hard lined on playing. But the last player, Wiley, was like, this is my first top 4, and I really want to play. I want to see who's the champion. So we were like, okay, let's do it. Let's play. So I ended up getting really, really sick in between top 4 and finals, as you can see just looking at me. I did get an early River Song on turn 2. That was nice. But like the finals pod was me, like Kinnan, but like the Kinnan with the stacks pieces, Talion control, and freaking Winota. So I didn't like my chances. Winota is a really bad matchup for me. It's a terrible matchup. It's just gonna like play a bunch of creatures that I can't really interact with because they're not being cast and just run me over. And Winota doesn't search his deck that often. It does not give a crap about life total pressure. And then Sarah Ascendant was the turn 1 play. I was like, oh, he has infinite life. It's over. Game over for me. This is done. Vincent wins. And he did. I tried my best to slow stuff down to make sure to protect my commander and make sure to like keep the game going. Like Ashani tried to make me sack it, and I was like, no. I mean, he was trying to pressure other people too, but like it didn't really matter. But I just wasn't at a good shot of winning. And unfortunately for me, the other players in the pod respected my deck, and they killed me first. So as we got later on into the game and more stacks pieces started to come down and people were able to do less things, like Kinnan's got Manglehorn, they have a Trinisphere, I have just a bunch of mana in a War Room, and Ashani's got like Blood Chief Ascension, so if I cast any spell, I die. He's got Karn to lock out artifacts. Winota at this point has been board wiped, but because Ashani deluged, but they still have Ranger Captain, so this literally no shot for me winning anymore. So then Ashani declares Talion as an attacker against me, and in response, I decide to take matters into my own hands and go out on my own terms. I'm like, I could lightning bolt myself to death, but then I'll die to Talion, who's on 1. So instead, I'm going to activate my War Room, lose 2 life, and not draw a card because I die as a state-based action. Get wrecked, Ashani. You can't kill me. You can't fire me. I quit. And that's how I went out in the finals pod. In between, what you seen, like when you saw me at first, and I was like dead, and then my boyfriend brought me some chicken noodle soup. So this is the second shout out for him in this video. The tiny TARDIS and the chicken noodle soup, it saved my life and calmed my tummy. So I was feeling more like myself, and I had a good game, honestly. I think there's no shot of me winning with that pod composition. Doesn't matter me going first with the nut hand. My deck game plan does not work very well against these decks, especially when they're doing well. Wow, look at that advertisement on Spell Table. We hate that, especially when like they're doing well. And like the turn 1 Sarah Ascendant from Winota just sealed it for me. It doesn't matter. I can't beat another control deck and a stacks deck. You know, it just wasn't a thing. So that's more or less the entire tournament report, game for game. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was one of the most in-depth things I've ever done for game analysis. It was just a really, really intense tournament. Playing control is mentally exhausting. Even though I was in my comfy robe, in my comfy chair, in my nice studio, and I had access to chicken noodle soup and other amenities, I was still kind of tired. And by kind of tired, I mean absolutely fucking dead by the end of that one. So if you are going to play a control deck in a cEDH tournament, you definitely can win. It is #ControlWinter. We had Stacks Kinnan, we had Winota, we had Talion, we had River Song in the top pod. It is most definitely #ControlWinter. And if you're going to be playing control deck, just be prepared for the game to go long. That's really all I got to say. If you have any thoughts on the deck, any card suggestions, any questions about interactions, things I missed, things I didn't cover, video was too long, Josh, could you please summarize? Let me know in the comments, please. I love to chat about this deck. This deck is fucking awesome, and I think there's a lot of brewing space left to be done with it. If you like my content and want to see more weird decks like this, we do a lot of casual decks too. We do cEDH event vlogs. You can check the links down in the description. Also check out our sponsor, Original Print Proxies. All the tokens that you guys saw me using in that tournament were from Original Print Proxies. They're awesome. Like, look at this really, really easy to read colorless mana token that you can use. It's just really, really nice. They're great. I like just having them to be easy to see on webcams. They're just awesome, and they look sick too. check out Original Print Proxies, buy yourself some tokens, buy yourself a nice proxy. I just saw, there's just so many cool things. Wait, look at the Pongify token. It's just monkey. I love it so much. It's so funny. So links to that and to our Card Trader affiliate link, they can be all found in the description. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay janky, my friends. Welcome to Control Winter, so I guess also stay warm, my friends. And I'll see you next time.